The train was 12 minutes late. And I only knew that because I had checked my phone 3 times already. I was standing on the platform at Union Station, with a paper cup of bad coffee going cold in my hand, doing that thing where you stare at the arrivals board, like staring harder will make the numbers change. It was a Tuesday in October. I had a pitch meeting at 11 that I was only half prepared for, and the 8:42 to downtown was sitting somewhere between here and nowhere. That was how I ended up on the bench near the east end of the platform. Not my usual spot. I always stood near the middle doors because they led out closest to the escalator, but the bench was there, and my feet were tired, and the coffee was bad enough that I needed to sit down while I reconsidered my choices. She was already sitting at the far end of it. Dark coat, navy blue, the kind that looked like it had been bought for a specific reason. She had a canvas tote bag between her feet and a worn paperback open in her lap. Her hair was pulled back loosely, a few pieces falling forward. She was not pretty in the way that makes you stop walking. She was the kind of pretty you notice after a minute, once you have already looked away and looked back. I sat down 2 feet away from her and looked at my phone. The board still said delayed. She turned a page. I drank my coffee. A woman with a stroller rolled past, and the stroller wheel caught a gap in the platform. And she swore quietly and kept moving. Then the woman on the bench said, without looking up from her book, "That's the 3rd time you've checked your phone in 2 minutes." I looked at her. "You were counting." "I wasn't trying to." She turned another page. "You're loud about it. It's a phone. You sigh every time you look at it." I had not noticed I was doing that. "The train's late," I said. Like that explained it. "It's always late on Tuesdays." She said it the way people say things they have confirmed through repetition and stopped being annoyed by. "How do you know that?" She finally looked up. Her eyes were dark brown, almost black, and steady in a way that made me feel like I was the one who had said something strange. Because I take this train every Tuesday. I did not have anything useful to say to that. So I looked back at the board. 11 minutes now. "What are you reading?" I asked because apparently I had decided to keep going. She held up the cover without turning it toward me properly. I caught the words, "The Remains of the Day," and the corner of an old Penguin paperback spine. "Any good?" "It's very good and also very sad," she said. "Which are often the same thing." I thought about that longer than I should have. The train came 7 minutes later. We both got on. She went to a seat near the window and opened her book before the doors closed. I stood near the pole 2 rows back and watched the city roll past the glass and thought about that sentence for the rest of the ride. Very good and also very sad, which are often the same thing. I missed my stop by 1. The next Tuesday, I left the house 12 minutes earlier than I needed to. I told myself it was because I had a morning call that was pushed up, something logistical that made the earlier train useful. I was thorough about the lie, which should have been the first sign. She was on the bench again. Same coat, different book. This one had a library sticker on the spine. I sat down in the same spot as before, left the same 2 feet between us, and said nothing. She said nothing. The train was, again, 7 minutes late. After 4 minutes of silence, she said, "You're back." "I ride this train," I said. "You ride the middle platform usually. I've seen you." I looked at her. "You've seen me. You always check the board twice and then put your headphones in before the train arrives." She said it without any particular emphasis, like she was describing weather patterns. I did not know what to do with that. I changed my routine. "Okay," she said, and went back to her book. Her name was DeSloan. I found that out on the 3rd Tuesday, when she answered a call right as the train pulled in and said her name to whoever was on the other end. "Sloan Whitfield." She said it quickly, like a person who has given their name enough times to have stripped it down to its functional parts. By the 4th Tuesday, we had what I would generously call a rapport. She would make one observation, I would respond. She would either agree or correct me and go back to her book. It was the least romantic thing I could imagine, and I looked forward to it more than I had looked forward to most things in recent memory. That morning, she was reading something with a green cover, and she had a coffee for the first time. A black coffee from the cart near the entrance. No oat milk? I asked, which was a strange thing to say to someone I barely knew. She looked at the cup. I don't like oat milk. Half the city's oat milk, half the city drinks oat milk. Half the city is wrong about a lot of things. I bought a coffee from the same cart the following week and drank it black. It tasted like hot disappointment, but I finished it. What I am trying to say is that, somewhere between the 2nd and the 6th Tuesday, I had stopped looking at the arrivals board. The morning it changed was a Thursday, which was unusual because nothing worth mentioning had ever happened to me on a Thursday before. I was not supposed to be at the station. My company had moved the week's client meetings to video, which meant I was working from home. Which meant I had no reason to be downtown, but I needed to drop something at my firm's office before noon, physical documents that the partner had asked for, specifically, which meant I had to get on the train. It was 8:39. The platform was half empty. I looked toward the bench before I looked at the board, and hated myself a little for it. She was not there. Obviously, she was not there. She wrote on Tuesdays. I knew this. I had known this. I stood on the platform and felt the specific embarrassment of disappointing yourself with your own expectations. I got on the train. I dropped the documents. I walked back through the lobby of our building and thought about how stupid it was to feel the absence of someone you had spoken to. Maybe 40 words total. Her real name turned out to be Sloane Whitfield, and she worked at a small architecture firm 3 blocks from my office, and I found that out not through anything interesting but because she told me. 6 Tuesdays in, I finally asked what she did, and she described it the same way she described everything. Directly, without decoration, like she had already decided what mattered and removed the rest. Residential, and some light commercial, mostly renovation work. I like fixing things more than building from scratch. Why? She thought about it. Because when something already exists, you have to understand it before you can change it. With new construction, you just impose. I thought about that on the train home. About imposing versus understanding. About the difference. I started looking forward to Tuesdays in a way that I recognized was not about the commute. And then, sometime in November, I started going in on Thursdays too. I told my office I preferred the early meeting slot on Thursdays. I shifted 2 standing calls. I reorganized a calendar that had been perfectly fine for 2 years. My manager said, without irony, that he appreciated my commitment to in-person collaboration. I smiled and said nothing. Sloane was not on the Thursday trains. I knew that, but the station was the same station, and sometimes I sat on the bench for a minute before the train came, and that felt like something, even if I could not name it cleanly. What I could not have told you then was that Sloane had been watching all of it. The Tuesday it broke open was the 2nd week of December. The platform was cold. Someone had strung cheap lights around the pillar near the entrance. And they blinked unevenly. Sloane was already on the bench when I got there, but she did not have a book. Her hands were around a coffee cup, and she was watching the board. I sat down, said good morning. She said it back. Then she said, can I ask you something? Sure. Why do you come in on Thursdays? I went, still. What? You don't have Thursday meetings. I've heard you on call. You reschedule things. I can hear it through the walls sometimes. We're in adjacent buildings on the same block. She looked at me. You started coming in on Thursdays about a month ago. The honest answer was forming somewhere in my chest, and I was not ready to say it. I shifted my schedule. Why? It's a better day for focus work. She looked at me for a long second. That is not a good answer. I know. You know, she said quietly. And you still said it. That sentence landed somewhere familiar. I looked at her. She was looking at the board. I didn't want to say the actual reason. I said, "What's the actual reason?" I looked down at my coffee. I've been looking for reasons to be at this station more than once a week. She did not respond right away. The lights on the pillar blinked. A gust came off the tracks and she pulled her coat tighter. "Okay," she finally said. "Not warm, not cold, just receiving it." "Okay?" I said. "Okay." She looked at me, and the corner of her mouth moved in a way that was not quite a smile but was closer to one than I had seen from her before. "The train's coming." We rode in together for the first time. She sat by the window again. I sat next to her. She did not open a book. We talked about the holiday lights going up downtown, a restaurant that had closed that she had liked, a building her firm had been asked to assess that turned out to have foundation issues. Nobody wanted to pay to fix. It was ordinary conversation. I have not forgotten a word of it. She got off 2 stops before mine. "See you Tuesday," she said. I said it back. I felt good about it all the way until I tried to fall asleep that night and could not. 3 weeks later, her firm hosted a small year-end event. Open to neighbors and local businesses, a low-key thing in their lobby, wine and food, and a wall of project photos. I found out about it because there was a card taped near the elevator in my building's lobby. I went. I told myself it was the kind of thing you go to. Networking, community, whatever word made it feel less like what it was. The lobby of her firm was bright and warm and smelled like pine from a big wreath near the entrance. There were maybe 30 people. Architecture books fanned out on a low table. Project renders on the walls. I saw her from across the rooms. She was standing with 2 colleagues, a glass of red in one hand, speaking with the kind of focus she gave everything. She was wearing a dark green dress that she had clearly owned for a while, comfortable in it, not performing. She looked up before I reached her, and her expression shifted in a way I had learned to read, as her version of surprised. "You came," she said when I got close enough. The card said, "Open to neighbors." It did. She looked at me steadily. "Our building is on the other side of the block." I walk fast. One of her colleagues said something and drifted away, and then it was just us, standing near a photo of a renovated Victorian on a street I recognized. "Are you actually interested in the work, or is this another Thursday?" she asked. "A little of both," I said. She was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded toward the photos on the wall. "Come on, I'll show you the ones I actually worked on." We walked the room slowly. She pointed to a row house in Georgetown, a converted garage outside Baltimore, a small storefront in Bethesda whose ceiling she had spent 4 months arguing to preserve. She talked about them the way I talked about nothing in my own job anymore. Like the details mattered because the details were where the meaning was. I told her that, not in those words, but something close. She looked at me sideways. "You say that like you've lost yours." "My what?" "The details that matter." I was quiet. "I'm good at my job," I said. "I've been doing it for 9 years. I know the rhythms, I know the clients, I know what to say in every kind of meeting." I looked at the photo of the Georgetown row house. Lately, it feels like I'm running a machine I built a long time ago and forgot to check whether I still wanted to run it. Sloan looked at the same photo. "What would you do if you could start over?" "I don't know," I said. I haven't let myself ask that question clearly enough to get an answer. "Why not?" "Because I'm good at what I do. It feels ungrateful to want something else." She turned to me. Being good at something, and it being the right thing, are 2 different problems. I looked at her. "That's the same face you made on the train the first day," she said. "What face?" "The one where something gets in past the door." I laughed. And it was the first time I had laughed at something in a while and meant it. We stayed until the last guests left. I helped carry a folding table to the storage closet because one of her colleagues had a bad shoulder. She watched me do it with that expression that was not quite a smile. And when I came back, she handed me the last glass of wine from a bottle on the table. You didn't have to do that, she said. The table? Come tonight. Help with the table. Any of it, I know, I said, but I wanted to. She looked down at her glass. Then back up. I'll walk you out. Outside the air was sharp and the streetlights were on. We stood on the sidewalk and I could see my breath. Thursday, she said. What? Come in on Thursday. The real kind, not the kind where you pretend you have a reason. Her eyes were steady. We could get coffee that's better than the cart. I said yes. Before she finished the sentence. That should have been the beginning of something uncomplicated, and for a while, it was. The Thursday coffees started. A place called Edgewood, 3 blocks from both our buildings, with small round tables and a wall of windows that caught the morning light. She always ordered the same thing. A pour-over, no sugar, with a glass of water on the side. She told me on the 3rd week that she had found the place by walking every block in a 6-block radius, and trying each one. That's very systematic, I said. There's no good reason to pick a coffee shop randomly, she said. I thought of the station bench, the careful distance she had always kept between herself and improvisation. Do you do that with most things? She looked at her cup. Most things, yes. Why? Because I'm better at the kind of thinking that happens before something, not during it. I filed that away. By January, the coffees had started to feel less like an add-on to Tuesday trains, and more like their own thing. She started texting sometimes. Short messages, usually observations. A building she had passed with bad proportions. A client who had asked for something structurally inadvisable. A book she had finished and found herself thinking about for reasons she could not pin down. I texted back. We got used to it. Then one Thursday morning she was not at Edgewood. No message, no explanation. I ordered my coffee, sat in our usual spot, worked through 2 emails and half a proposal revision. I told myself she had a site visit, a client call. Anything. I left 40 minutes later and told myself I was not bothered. The following Thursday the same. Empty chair, no text. I messaged her Wednesday night. Something neutral. Edgewood tomorrow? I have something I want to ask your opinion on. It was true enough. I did have a project question. But I also just wanted to know if she was going to be there. She did not respond. By the 2nd week I had stopped pretending the work question was the reason. I sat in the chair across from the empty one and tried to figure out what I had done wrong and came up blank every time. The thing about Sloane was that she did not waste words. Every message she had ever sent me had meant something. So the silence also meant something. I just could not read it. On a Thursday afternoon in late January, she texted, "Are you free Saturday? Roast at Edgewood, 10 a.m. I stared at my phone for longer than I needed to. Then I wrote back, yes. She was already there when I arrived. Same table. The morning light was coming through the windows at an angle that caught the edge of her hair. She looked up when I walked in and something in her face did the shift I had learned to watch for. Hi, she said. Hi. I sat down. You disappeared. She looked at her cup. I know. For 3 weeks. I know. The barista brought my coffee without me ordering. We had apparently become that kind of regular. I wrapped my hands around the mug and waited. I'm not good at this part, Sloane said finally. What part? The part where something stops being structured. She looked at me. I know how to work. I know how to plan. I know how to spend time with someone inside a routine that we've both agreed to. She paused. I don't know what to do when it starts to feel like something that does not have a structure. I gestured vaguely between us. Stop feeling structured, she said. Yes. I looked at her. So, you just went quiet. I know it wasn't the right thing, it wasn't. I kept my voice even. You just left. No explanation. I spent 2 weeks wondering what I had done. She absorbed that without flinching, which I respected even when I was still irritated. I'm sorry. That part I handled badly. We were quiet for a moment. Someone at the counter ordered something complicated. The machine started up. Sloane, I said. Why did you text me the address for this event? She looked at me directly. What do you mean? The firm event. The card in my building lobby. I looked this week. My building is on the wrong block. We don't share a lobby. I looked at her. The card wouldn't have been there. Something in her face changed. Not dramatically, just a fraction. Okay, she said. Okay? She placed both hands flat on the table, which I had come to recognize as her version of deciding to be honest. I put the card there. I heard the words clearly. I let them settle. You put it there? Yes. Knowing I work in that building? Yes. A few seconds passed. The coffee machine stopped. Why? She looked at the table for a moment, then back at me. I saw you at the station maybe 2 months before you sat down on that bench. You were always in the same spot, headphones in before the train arrived. Same routine every time. You looked like someone who was very good at being exactly where they were supposed to be. She paused. And also, like someone who had not decided whether they wanted to be there anymore. I said nothing. I thought about saying something a dozen times and didn't. Then the event was coming and she stopped. I thought if you were somewhere outside the routine, I might be able to tell whether I had actually read you right. By putting a card in my lobby. Yes. Without telling me. Yes. I leaned back in my chair. The morning light had shifted, and now it was hitting the window full on. Too bright in a way I had not noticed until now. I looked at the table, then at my coffee, then at the wall behind her head. Every Tuesday I've thought was chance, I said. You sitting on that bench. The bench I chose, yes. The rest of it was you. But you picked the bench because you knew I'd be there. I knew you might be. There was a difference in that, and I could not decide yet how much it mattered. The Thursday question. How did you know I didn't have Thursday meetings? Our buildings share a ventilation shaft. I'm not joking. You can hear conversations through the wall on quiet mornings. I heard you reschedule things. It wasn't Schwat. She stopped. I wasn't trying to listen, but I heard, and you asked me about it anyway. Knowing what the answer was. I wanted to hear you say it. I pressed my hands together on the table. There was something sitting in my chest that was not quite anger. More like the feeling of picking up a photograph and discovering the frame had been there the whole time, constructed before you walked into the room. All those Tuesday silences. The first question she had ever asked me. The way she had never seemed surprised when I came back. The card. The bench, I said slowly. The first morning. You were reading. You didn't look up when I sat down, no. But you knew it was me. A beat. Yes, I looked at her. She looked back. She did not look away, and she did not offer anything extra, which was exactly the kind of person she had always been, and I could not figure out if that made it better or worse. I need you to tell me one thing, I said. Okay. Was any of it? I stopped it. The Thursdays. The event. The texts about the buildings. Were those still strategy? She was quiet for long enough that I could hear my own pulse. Then she said, no, those were not strategy. Those were me not knowing what to do with someone I had not expected to actually. She paused. To want to keep knowing. I looked at her hands, still flat on the table. I was not expecting you to be the way you are, she said quietly. I thought I was creating an opportunity to meet someone I had already assessed. And then you were not the assessment. You were different in ways I had not predicted, and I did not know what to do with that, so I tried to make it structured again, and then I could not. I exhaled. That is the most words I have ever heard you say at once. The corner of her mouth moved. I know. I looked out the window. A woman was walking a dog that was clearly walking her. A cab idled at the corner. The morning was doing what mornings did, indifferent to the fact that mine had just reorganized itself. You should have told me, I said. I know. The card especially, I would have come anyway. Something in her face shifted then, just slightly, but I caught it. You don't know that. I do, I said. I was already looking for reasons. I looked at her. That's the thing you maybe didn't account for. She was quiet. I'm angry about the card, I said. I want to be clear about that. Not because you put it there, but because I didn't get to choose. I would have chosen the same thing, but I didn't get to. That's fair. And I need that to not happen again. Not because I expect perfect honesty always. Nobody has that. But the kind where something affects me, and you decide I don't need to know. I kept my voice steady. That can't be part of this. She nodded once. It won't be, you can't promise that, and then disappear for 3 weeks, when something gets complicated. I know. She looked at me. I won't. I believed her, which was interesting, because I had not believed things easily for a while. We sat there for a moment. The light had moved. Again, my coffee had gone lukewarm. Outside, the cab finally pulled away from the corner. Then she reached into the tote bag she always carried, and took out a small envelope and slid it across the table toward me. Plain white, unsealed. What is this? I asked. Something I brought, in case I ended up being honest today. I opened it. Inside was a card, the same cream cardstock her firm used for the event materials. On it, in her handwriting, neat and direct the way she was. No placement, no timing, no plan. Just coffee if you want. I read it twice. Then I looked at her. That's the offer, she said. I set the card down on the table between us. The bench on Tuesdays, I said, and coffee on Thursdays, and whatever else happens when someone stops organizing it. Yes, she said. Starting now. If you want. I want, I said. She picked up her coffee. I picked up mine. Outside, the window, the street was doing its ordinary morning things. People with their dogs and their errands. And their unremarkable Saturdays. And at a small round table, with too much light coming through the glass. Sloane Whitfield looked at me over the rim of her cup, with an expression that was finally, fully, completely unguarded. It was the first time I had seen her face, without the frame she had built around it. It was better than anything she could have planned.